Mom, that hand was destroyed while pulling soldiers out of an explosion. Staff Sergeant Ethan Caldwell, Nekaha Judge. Marilyn adjusted her glasses slowly, her sharp eyes locking onto Olivia Kensington with a level of disappointment that instantly changed the atmosphere inside the courtroom. The entire courtroom had gone silent. Even the audience members sitting in the back rows seemed to sense that something unforgettable was about to happen. Olivia sat stiffly at the defendant's table, her expensive Chanel blazer perfectly pressed, but the confidence she had walked in with was beginning to crack under the unbearable pressure of Judge Marilyn's stare. Across from her, Staff Sergeant Ethan Caldwell remained silent, his scarred right hand resting against the folder in front of him. His posture was calm, disciplined, military, but the pain in his eyes was impossible to ignore. Judge Marilyn opened the case file carefully. "Mrs. Kensington," she began coldly, "I have been on the bench for over 35 years. I have dealt with thieves, scammers, violent people, manipulative people, dishonest people, and every type of bully you can imagine." She paused. "But very few people disgust me the way you do." The courtroom gasped softly. Olivia swallowed hard. "Your Honor, I think that's unfair." Judge Marilyn immediately cut her off. "No. What's unfair is that a man who served this country, nearly died serving this country, and still struggles every single day because of that service, had to stand in a parking lot and be humiliated by someone like you." Olivia's face tightened. Judge Marilyn leaned forward. "You spit in this man's face." Olivia tried to speak again. "It was an accident." "No, Mom," Judge Marilyn snapped sharply. "Do not insult my intelligence. I watched the footage 3 times last night. It was deliberate, calculated, cruel." The audience sat frozen. Judge Marilyn slowly lifted a paper from the file, and then she continued. "You called him a government leech." She looked directly at Olivia. "A government leech." Her voice became dangerously quiet. "This man earned a Purple Heart after an explosion killed his best friend, standing 3 feet away from him." Ethan lowered his eyes. Judge Marilyn continued. "He carried wounded soldiers to safety while his own hand was torn apart by shrapnel." Silence filled the courtroom. "And you," Judge Marilyn said with visible disgust, "have the nerve to sit here in your designer clothes and mock his sacrifice because you think your salary makes you superior?" Olivia's composure finally cracked. Tears began forming in her eyes. "Your Honor, I was emotional." Judge Marilyn slammed her pen onto the desk. "No, you were arrogant." The sound echoed through the courtroom. "You believe money gives you value. You believe expensive handbags give you class. Let me explain something to you, Miss Kensington." Judge Marilyn pointed toward Ethan. "That man has more dignity in one scarred hand than you have in your entire body." The audience erupted into applause before the bailiff restored order. Olivia's mascara had begun running down her face now. Judge Marilyn wasn't finished. "I reviewed your history." Olivia froze instantly. "Yes," Judge Marilyn continued, flipping through the files slowly. "The hotel doorman incident, the complaints from veteran employees, the discrimination reports, the housekeeper restraining order." Olivia looked completely horrified. "You have a pattern," Judge Marilyn said. "You target people you think are beneath you." Judge Marilyn's voice turned ice cold. "You are not a victim. You are a bully with money." The courtroom remained absolutely silent. Judge Marilyn then turned toward Ethan, her tone softening slightly. "Staff Sergeant Caldwell," she said respectfully, "this court thanks you for your service." Ethan nodded quietly. Judge Marilyn looked back at Olivia one final time. "As for you, Miss Kensington, the judgment is awarded fully in favor of the plaintiff." Olivia's breathing became shaky. "You will pay $50, 00 for assault, emotional distress, and battery." Olivia's eyes widened in panic. Judge Marilyn continued without emotion. In addition to that, I am awarding punitive damages because your conduct was malicious, hateful, and intentional. She closed the folder firmly. Total judgment, $90,000. Olivia completely collapsed back into her chair. Your Honor, please. This will ruin me. Judge Marilyn stared at her without sympathy. Now you know what consequences feel like. The courtroom exploded into applause. But then Judge Marilyn did something nobody expected. She slowly stood up from her chair. The room instantly fell silent again. Judge Marilyn looked directly at Ethan Caldwell. Then, with complete respect, she raised her hand into a crisp military salute. Ethan's eyes filled with tears immediately. After a brief moment, he returned the salute with his scarred hand. Several veterans in the audience stood up emotionally. Some were crying openly. Olivia sat frozen in complete humiliation as the entire courtroom rose into a standing ovation for the wounded veteran she had mocked. And in that moment, every ounce of arrogance she once carried completely disappeared. Judge Marilyn adjusted her glasses slowly and looked down at the thick case file resting on her bench. The courtroom had already gone silent long before she even spoke. Everyone inside the room could feel the tension building, like a storm ready to explode. Olivia Kensington sat at the defendant's table, wearing a cream-colored Chanel suit and gripping her designer handbag so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Just an hour earlier, she had entered the courtroom with a smug smile and the confidence of someone who believed money could protect her from consequences. But now that confidence was fading rapidly under the cold stare of Judge Marilyn. Across from her sat Staff Sergeant Ethan Caldwell, a decorated Army veteran whose scarred right hand rested quietly on a folder filled with evidence, witness statements, and medical reports. Ethan sat with calm military posture, but the exhaustion in his eyes revealed years of pain most people could never imagine. The scars on his hand stretched across his skin like permanent reminders of a war that had already taken too much from him. Judge Marilyn finally spoke. Miss Kensington, she began slowly, her voice sharp enough to cut through steel. I have spent more than 35 years in courtrooms dealing with every kind of human behavior imaginable. I have seen selfishness. I have seen cruelty. I have seen dishonesty and arrogance at levels that would shock ordinary people. She paused and removed her glasses carefully. But what I witnessed in this case is one of the most disgusting examples of entitled behavior I have seen in a very long time. The courtroom became completely motionless. Olivia swallowed nervously. Your Honor, I think. Judge Marilyn immediately raised her hand. No. You've done enough talking already. The audience shifted quietly in their seats. Judge Marilyn leaned slightly forward. You parked illegally in a handicapped space without a permit. When a security officer approached you professionally and politely, you didn't respond with basic human decency. Instead, you verbally abused him, insulted him, degraded him, and then spit directly in his face. Olivia's cheeks flushed red. It wasn't intentional, she whispered weakly. Judge Marilyn's expression hardened instantly. Do not lie to me again. The words echoed across the courtroom. I watched the security footage 3 separate times last night. What you did was deliberate. You stepped forward, looked him directly in the eyes, and spit in his face while insulting his military service. Olivia lowered her eyes. Judge Marilyn turned toward Ethan briefly. This man served 2 combat tours overseas. Her voice softened for only a moment before turning cold again. He nearly died serving this country. The courtroom remained silent. He watched his best friend get blown apart by an IED explosion only a few feet away from him. Despite being severely injured himself, he still carried wounded soldiers to safety. Several audience members were already wiping tears from their eyes. Judge Marilyn slowly looked back toward Olivia. And your response to that sacrifice was to call him a government leech. Olivia's breathing became shaky. Your Honor. I was upset and emotional. Judge Marilyn slammed her palm lightly against the desk. No, Miss Kensington. You were arrogant. The sound startled Olivia completely. You believe your income makes you superior to other people. You believe expensive clothing and luxury vehicles somehow place you above ordinary Americans. Judge Marilyn pointed directly toward Ethan. That man sitting across from you has more honor in one scarred hand than you have shown in your entire life. The courtroom erupted into applause before the bailiff called for order. Olivia's mascara had begun running down her face now, but Judge Marilyn showed absolutely no sympathy. I also reviewed your history before this hearing. The judge continued calmly. Olivia froze instantly. Yes, Judge Marilyn said while opening another folder. The hotel doorman incident in 2019 involving a Gulf War veteran. Olivia's eyes widened. The restraining order filed by your former housekeeper whose husband served in the Marines. The audience gasped softly. And the multiple discrimination complaints filed against you by veteran employees at Wellington Pharmaceuticals. Olivia looked completely horrified now. Judge Marilyn lifted a printed document from the file. This email, she said coldly, was written by you personally. She began reading aloud. Why do we keep hiring these broken military types? They're damaged goods with PTSD who can't handle real work. Judge Marilyn lowered the paper slowly. You wrote that? Olivia immediately shook her head. That email was private. Judge Marilyn cut her off instantly. I don't care if you wrote it on the moon. The audience burst into nervous laughter. You mocked veterans. You discriminated against disabled service members. You treated people who sacrificed for this country as if they were beneath you. Olivia was openly crying now. Judge Marilyn's voice became even colder. You are not here because of one bad day. She pointed directly toward Olivia. You are here because this behavior has become part of who you are. The silence inside the courtroom became unbearable. Judge Marilyn turned toward Ethan again. Staff Sergeant Caldwell, she said respectfully, please explain how this incident affected you. Ethan stood slowly. His scarred hand trembled slightly from permanent nerve damage. Yes, Mom, he said quietly. The courtroom listened carefully. When she spit on me, it wasn't just the assault that hurt. His voice cracked slightly. It was the words he swallowed hard. I lost friends overseas. Good men. Men who never came home. The room became emotional instantly. I spent years trying to rebuild my life after the military. Some days I still wake up hearing explosions in my head. Several audience members were openly crying now. And when she looked at me like I was worthless, Ethan continued quietly, it brought back feelings I've spent years trying to overcome. Olivia covered her face with her hands. Ethan looked down briefly before continuing. I wasn't trying to fight with her. I was just doing my job. Judge Marilyn nodded slowly. You handled yourself with remarkable restraint, Sergeant. Ethan sat back down quietly. Judge Marilyn then removed her glasses one final time. Miss Kensington, she said firmly, people like you often mistake money for character. Olivia sobbed softly. But character is revealed by how you treat people who cannot benefit you. The courtroom remained completely silent. You assaulted a wounded combat veteran because you believed he was beneath you. Judge Marilyn closed the case file firmly. This court finds fully in favor of the plaintiff. Olivia's breathing became rapid immediately. You will pay $50,000 for assault, emotional distress, and battery. Olivia shook her head in panic. Additionally, Judge Marilyn continued, because your behavior was malicious and intentionally degrading toward a military veteran. I am awarding punitive damages." The audience leaned forward. Total judgment, $90,000. Olivia completely collapsed backward into her chair. "Oh my God." Judge Marilyn showed no emotion. "You will sell assets if necessary. You will figure it out." Tears streamed down Olivia's face uncontrollably now. "Your Honor, please, this will destroy my life." Judge Marilyn stared at her coldly. "And yet you showed absolutely no concern for destroying someone else's dignity." The courtroom exploded into applause, but Judge Marilyn still wasn't finished. She slowly stood up from her chair. The entire room instantly fell silent again. Judge Marilyn looked directly at Ethan Caldwell. Her voice softened with genuine respect. "Staff Sergeant Caldwell, on behalf of this courtroom and every decent American who understands sacrifice, thank you for your service." Ethan's eyes filled with tears immediately. Then Judge Marilyn did something nobody expected. She stood straight, raised her hand, and delivered a crisp military salute. The courtroom gasped. Ethan immediately stood and returned the salute with his scarred hand. At that exact moment, dozens of audience members rose to their feet in emotional applause. Several veterans in the gallery saluted as well. Some people were crying openly. Olivia sat frozen in complete humiliation as the entire courtroom honored the man she had mocked only weeks earlier. Her expensive handbag slipped from her lap and crashed onto the floor, scattering makeup, credit cards, and luxury items across the courtroom tiles. But nobody looked at her anymore. All attention remained on Ethan Caldwell. For the first time in years, the wounded veteran who had spent so long feeling invisible finally felt seen, respected, and defended. And as the applause thundered through the courtroom walls, Olivia Kensington realized something far too late. Money could buy power. Money could buy luxury. Money could buy silence. But money could never buy honor. Iska main hook be du nickel car. Your Honor, he's just a security guard. The entire courtroom went silent. Then the wounded Army veteran slowly raised his scarred hand and said, "Mom, that hand was destroyed while pulling soldiers out of an explosion." 3 seconds later, Judge Marilyn removed her glasses, stared directly at the arrogant millionaire woman, and delivered the most brutal courtroom takedown television had ever seen.